This video we will learn how to make a patriotic table runner. So first let's get our kit out, and we are going to first just work with the pieces of fabric. There should be 3 pieces there. So grab your pens and let's grab one of these pieces of blue star fabric and unfold the red fabric. We are going to place the right sides of these fabrics together and line up these short sides and pin them together, all lined up. And then we are going to turn this around and do the same thing with the other piece of star fabric. Once you have that all pinned, we'll head over to the sewing machine and sew this. Make sure that you hold your threads when you start and reverse stitch a few stitches. We are just going to put the right side of that presser foot on the right side of the piece of fabric to give us about 1/2 inch of seam allowance. Make sure to reverse stitch at the end as well. And you can notice here that I am using my both my hands to pull this tight as it goes through. See, my left hand is pulling a little bit on that fabric, not a lot, just holding it tight. If you pull too much, you can mess up your sewing machine. Now back at the ironing board, we're going to make sure our iron is set on a cotton setting or a little bit lower, and pull this seam apart, and we're going to press the seam allowance towards the blue star fabric. Now you might need to use a little bit of pressure and patience to get that to stay, just because this is some pretty thick fabric. We don't want to use too hot of a iron because it could melt this fabric. Now once that's done, we're going to fold it hot dog wise in half. Make sure the first part that you line up is these seams here. That way when we sew it together, it won't look funny. And then we're just going to line up all the edges all the way around and pin. Now make sure that this seam lines up as well and that there's no wrinkles. Once we get to this other end over here, we're going to leave an opening when we sew so that we can turn this right side out. So we want a pretty big opening. I put a backwards pin in there so that I knew where to start. So I'm going to start at this backwards pin and leaving an opening there, reverse stitch, and I'm going to come almost to the edge over here and make sure my needle is down. Then I can just pick up my presser foot, pivot this fabric, and start going again. That keeps me from having to stop sewing and then start sewing. I can just do it all in one fell swoop. So we're going to go all the way around here. We've already left our opening in the one end so that we can turn it right side out. And so now we're just going to go all the way to the edge of the other side. Once we have that sewn, we're going to just reach in this hole that we left and grab the other end and pull it through. Once we get that pulled through, we do need to go in there with our finger or a pencil or a poker or something and poke these corners out really nice and square. Alright, so now we're going to iron this flat by taking and pinching that side seam so that it is right on the edge here. We're going to iron that side seam down. So I'm making sure that I'm pulling out all that extra fabric that wants to fold in there because I want this to be a nice crisp edge. And again, patience is key with that iron, especially on the corners where it's super thick. Now to finish this hole that we left, we're just going to turn in about 3/4 of an inch, lay it flat, and iron it down. See how this finishes that edge? And we're going to put a pin in it because we will finish that with the sewing machine in a second. Now we're just going to go from one side to the other and press down that other side that doesn't have a seam allowance in it. So I'm going to pull this extra fabric out on the seam side, press that, and then push over and make a fold on the other side. That way we get rid of all the wrinkles and everything will lay flat when we top stitch it. Now we're going to head to the sewing machine and top stitch. I'm going to start on the edge with the hole in it. That way I can make sure that that's closed up. And see how we're stitching right on the very edge? It's a lot closer than before, so you can either move your needle to the furthest right position, or you can just hold the edge of the fabric further in underneath your presser foot. And we're just going to sew all the way around, and this is going to hold the table runner in place for if you ever wash it or fold it up or anything. That way it won't go back to being a tube. This is going to help it stay flat. Congratulations, you have now made a beautiful patriotic table runner perfect for the 4th of July or, you know, any picnic. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you will enjoy your table runner.